Missouri Breaks, it's steep country with the Missouri River running through the bottom of it. You might see bighorn sheep, bald eagles, great eroded cliffs, timber slopes up high, cottonwoods down on the river, prickly pear cactus, sagebrush, a lot of grass, crested wheatgrass, quiet. It's very quiet here. The best way to get to the Hagadone Homestead is by floating the Missouri River. A lot of people put in upriver just 9 miles, and they'll float down here in a day, and then they'll keep going 2 or 3 days downriver. So floating the river is the best way to get to the Hagadone Homestead. The road that used to access this site washes every year, so there's no maintained road to the Hagadone Homestead. So if people want to visit the homestead, they float the river. This is the Frank Hagadone Homestead, and he was here at this location from 1923 until 1954. He was an old codger. He was a pretty independent fellow. He always had Bull Durham tobacco, always had rolled his own cigarette, and he would finish a cigarette, he would stop driving if he was going into town, roll another one, and keep smoking. He drove a 34 Chevy Coupe forever that he kept parked on top of the brakes, because down here you couldn't get a car down here. He worked the road all the time. So he was an independent cuss, and I think everyone at that time was trying to take advantage of any opportunity of free land that they could. People knew about these riverbanks, these terraces from folks coming up on the steamboats in the late 1800s. So everything was mapped out. So I think any flat piece of ground they could find, they took advantage of. By the time he died, he had over 400 acres. Then they auctioned off all his personal belongings, auctioned off the land separately. So for $10, they got the land here. And then when the government acquired that land 30 years later, they sold it for a couple $100,000. So they made a lot of money over 30 years on this $10 piece of land. For the last 10 years, we've been stabilizing the buildings at this location. Replacing logs and stabilizing the frame buildings and re-roofing them and trying to maintain them as historic objects. So we want to stabilize them without making them look like new buildings, so that a person can see, wow, what a desolate life this was when the Hagadones lived down here. And you had to be prepared to be by yourself, and I don't think there are a lot of families who are willing to make that sacrifice. The difficult terrain here, the isolation here, the fact that no community ever developed here. There was never any intent to run power to this location. The Missouri Breaks homesteads and this Hagadone homestead, they were really left on their own. There was never an intent to include them in a community. So it's a rough life, and we're trying to preserve that sense of place. Cans on the table still, the cook stove that's inside, the beds that I'd struggle to sleep on one night. But the fact that it's all still here, and the only ones who guarded are the rattlesnakes and the rabbit. It's amazing that it's still standing. It's been a labor of love, though, because there have been people passionate about this site for quite a few years. And the people who float the river and come see it have been great about leaving artifacts on site. I think people appreciate the fact that there's still evidence on the landscape of the homesteaders, people who came before us, and they appreciate the hardship and say, wow, I'm here just for a few days, and I get to visit it and appreciate it for a few days, but I get to go home to my own bed. But there are people here who lived here, and without drinking water, without electricity, without a telephone to contact anyone else. It's a pretty amazing feat, and I think people appreciate the evidence they left for us.